Our panel now, Julie Roginsky is a Democratic strategist and a Fox News contributor, Boyd Matheson, a Republican strategist, and the former chief of staff to the Republican senator from Utah, Mike Lee. Boyd, I want to start with you. The U.S. response, 9 individuals or organizations sanctioned, 4 of them individual officers of one of the Russian intelligence agencies, along with 3 companies that apparently do business with Russia. How would you assess the overall severity of this move by the White House?
Well, I think it's very serious in diplomatic circles. This is basically one step below kicking out the ambassador to the country. So it's very serious in those terms. The fact that these folks have 72 hours to leave the country is a pretty significant signal to the Russians from the Obama administration. Although it's a very odd coming from the Obama administration. They've been really all over the map with Russia, starting with a very pompous Secretary Kerry talking about the reset and a lecture back several years ago. So they seem to be very inconsistent. The timing is very interesting, but the severity in terms of the political circles is definitely real.
Yeah, there are 35 Russian intelligence operatives getting kicked out of the U.S. No doubt they have diplomatic cover for what they do, but we call them intelligence operatives. Julie, what about that? What about the whole Russian reset thing and the hot mic moment where President Obama said he was going to have more flexibility after his re-election, which ultimately did take place? Why are things so poisonous with the Russians right now?
Well, there's one common denominator, right? George Bush came in, said he looked into Vladimir Putin's soul and saw a good person there. Barack Obama, it was actually Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State, that wanted to do the reset. Now we have President-elect Trump praising Vladimir Putin. The common denominator is this: they will always be let down by Vladimir Putin, because Vladimir Putin is an authoritarian despot who longs for the days of the Soviet Union's greatness and considers the West to be the perfect foil for convincing his own people who are struggling economically and living in an increasingly repressive regime that all their problems stem not from his policies but from the West. And so the West will always be the red flag for the Russians to use against their own people, or at least for Vladimir Putin. I will say this about the sanctions. They are, and I don't even call them sanctions, I don't know what this is, I call it a disgraceful and weak move by the Obama administration. Lindsey Graham is absolutely right. What Congress needs to do, I don't have any confidence that President-elect Trump would sign this into law, but I would hope that President Obama would have done this. He failed to do that, which is go after Vladimir Putin and his inner circle economically. That is the only language Vladimir Putin understands. He only understands if you go after the billions of dollars in assets that he has shielded in the West and around the world. The oligarchs that prop him up and surround him have assets all over Western Europe and in the United States, including real estate fortunes and also personal fortunes in equity markets in London and the New York Stock Exchange. Freeze those assets, go after them in the pocketbook. It is the only language Putin understands. Throwing out a bunch of quote-unquote diplomats who are really intelligence agents, that's what we used to do during the Cold War. Each side did that to the other. It doesn't make any difference. They'll send new ones in. Punishing the Russian intelligence services by banning them from coming here? Okay, great. What does that do to Vladimir Putin or the oligarchs who are threatening the Russian people and the West with their reprehensible behavior? This is a weak and feckless move by the Obama administration, and I am disgusted with how weak it is.
They also, the White House, put out a statement saying that we will continue to take a variety of actions at a time and place of our choosing, some of which will not be publicized. Boyd, I suppose it's possible there could be some things going on here that we won't hear about or will hear about after the fact. But there are many people who think that Donald Trump would not take as tough a line against the Russians as Barack Obama has. Do you think that this will perhaps change his thinking?
It's really going to put President-elect Trump into a box. It's really an interesting dilemma for him coming into office. And I don't think it's helpful to the interests of the country that suddenly he's going to be faced with, does he remove the sanctions that President Obama just inserted? And if he does that, is he signaling that he is good friends with Vladimir Putin and things are going to be different? Or is he going to be more hardline and show American strength and some of the things that Julie talked about in terms of really defending those interests? And so you have this really interesting quandary where the Obama administration, who even just a few months ago refused to put some travel restrictions on some agents, even as it was advised to them by the FBI and Congress, saying they didn't want to provoke Russia in any way. And now they're putting these kinds of things on as they walk out the door, setting up a really interesting and very difficult scenario for an incoming administration that many people have criticized on the foreign policy front.
Julie, we have less than a minute left, but you know, the White House has said that these actions have been going on for a long time. Why slap these sanctions on with just 3 weeks left in the Obama term?
Well, first of all, if you remember, we did slap something called the Magnitsky Act and a bunch of sanctions on the Russians a long time ago in response to what they were doing in suppression of the press and killing, frankly, journalists that were writing stories that were less than complimentary about Vladimir Putin. It has prevented a lot of the people that I talked about from doing business in the West. We need to up that pressure. That was the right strategy to do. The Obama administration was on the right track, along with Congress and people like John McCain and others who, in a bipartisan manner, were doing the right thing on this. Sadly, anything that Barack Obama does through executive order now could be easily overturned starting on January 20th by the next president. That's why it's so important for Congress to act. I have no confidence or hope or expectation that they can act in the next 10, 20 days. But if there is any way to get this codified into law, and to have these sanctions like the Magnitsky Act expanded that targets specifically not the Russian people, but the oligarchs and Vladimir Putin, that's what needs to be done. Any executive order now, I have no confidence will ever be upheld by a man who's praised Vladimir Putin to the stars and thinks he's a great leader to emulate in many ways.
Julie Roginsky and Boyd Matheson, thank you both.
Thank you.